Hey guys, so in this video we're looking at function notation using graphs. So it's the one that looks like this. So first we want to look at the first part. We can find our y values for a given x in a function by reading a graph. For example, for the function below, or the graph that's given down here, f of 0 is going to be 2. Now, why is this? Well, another way to say f of x is saying y. Well, if we substitute 0 in for x, that means on the graph, we're going to our x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, and finding where x is 0. Well, x is 0 is at this line, so it's on the y-axis. Well, where is the function crossing where x is 0? The only point where x is 0 on the function is this point right here. So, to get to that point, we are going nowhere on the x-axis, but we're going up 1, 2. So our y value when x is 0 is 2. On the x-axis at 0, we are at the number 2 on the y-axis. That's what we just did. Hence, the value of f of 0 is going to be 2. On the other hand, we can also find the x values given the y values. So if we were told that f of x equals 2. So another way to write this, again, is instead of f of x, we can put y equals 2. So, another way to say it is y equals 2. We're going to figure out what x value would be. So, on the y-axis, we're at 2. So, I'm going to erase this, so if you need to pause the video so you can record it, or so you can write it down or copy it. So this one, we're on the y-axis, so we're looking at the vertical line, and we're at 2. So starting at the origin, we're going up 2, so we're looking at this line right here. Where is our function at this point? It's right here. That's the only time that it crosses it, besides over here. But we're not going to worry about that. We're only going to worry about this one. So we're at the number 0 on the x-axis. Therefore, f of 0, or y, equals 2 when our x is 0. So how are we going to do this with when x is -1? Well, first I'm going to erase everything, so pause the video if you need to. We're going to start with x equals -1. I'm going to go to my graph. I'm going to start at my origin, and I'm going to count to the left 1 because it's negative and it's my x value, so I'm going to go to the left 1. Now, looking at just this line, when x is -1, where is my function crossing this line? Only at this point. I'm just looking at this point, and I see that my y value is +1. So I'm going to write for number 1, +1. Now, what is the ordered pair when x is -1? Well, I already know what my x value is. I just found what my y value is. So I'm going to put them together. So negative 1, 1. For number 3, I'm asked what is the value of y if given f of negative 1. So we substituted in negative 1 into f of x. So I know that my x value has to be x, or my negative 1 value, it has to be x. So it's the same thing that we did for number 1. If our x is negative 1, our y is going to be positive 1. What is the value of x if given f of x equals 1? Well, another way to write f of x is y equals 1. So if y is 1, x is going to be what? Negative 1. So I'm going to skip the try it on your own just because we've already done it. But I do want to zero in on the fact, what if you were only given f of 3 and you want to find what your y value is? Nope, the other way, my bad. I want to zero in on number 4. What if you were asked to find your x value and only told f of x equals negative 2? So, aka y equals negative 2. What is your x going to be? So we're going to go to the graph. We're going to erase what we did last time. And we've got to look at our y-axis. Well, starting at the origin, I'm going to go down 1, 2. So I know I'm on this line, this horizontal line, where y is negative 2. Where is my function at when y is negative 2? The only spot it's at is right here. And we're asked, what is the x value there? Well, we're going to start at the origin, always, and go over 1, 2, 3. So over 3 will be my x value. So when y is negative 2, my x is positive 3. We can use a table to find values of f of x given x. Once we find our y values, we can use those values to form ordered pairs. Then we can plot the ordered pairs on a graph. So we're going to be given f of x equals x plus 2. We're going to substitute in our x values that are given. So I'm going to zoom in a lot because I want to make sure that we can be able to do this by hand. So we've got f of 1 equals 1 plus 2. So 1 plus 2 gives me 3. F of 2 equals 2 plus 2. Well, 2 plus 2 gives me 4. And then f of 3, because I'm plugging in 3. We've got 3 instead of x plus 2. Well, 3 plus 2 gives me 5. Now, during class, I took time to do this. If you don't need to do this, then you can just look at, okay, x is going to be my first value in my ordered pair. F of x is going to be my second number in my ordered pair. That's fine. But if you need to, go ahead and write your ordered pairs before you try to graph it. So 1 is my y is my x value. 3 is my y value. 2 is my x value. 4 is my y value. 3 is my x value. 5 is my y value. Then I'm going to graph it. So 1, so starting the origin, going over 1, then up 3. So there is my first point. My second point is starting at the origin, going over 1, 2, going up 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is my second point. My third point is going to be 3, 5. So start the origin, going over to the right because it's positive 3, and then going up 5. And then I'm going to connect them because it is a function. And then there's our graph. Now we're going to do it for the second example. The second example, we've got f of x equals at negative x minus 1. So we're going to come in here, plug in negative 2, so f of negative 2 equals negative 2 minus 1. So I know this is a little bit extra, and actually I'm going to rewrite this really quickly because I want you to actually look at what I'm writing. F of negative 2 equals negative 2 subtract 1. So make sure you are not getting rid of this negative in front of the x. When we're given x values, you are only changing the x, not anything beside it. So that is why we have to keep the negative outside of the parentheses, and that is why it's a good habit to get into, to put the given input or the given x value into parentheses. So now we've got, I'm going to do it in yellow, negative times a negative. So we're going to have a positive 2 minus 1, and then a 2 minus 1 is just going to give me 1. Now for the next one, this gets a little less complicated because it's 0, but we still have f of 0 equals negative 0 minus 1. Well, 0 can not be positive or negative, so if you multiply it by a negative, it's still 0. So you get 0 minus 1. Well, 0 minus 1 gives you negative 1. And then the next one, you have f of 2, because you're plugging in 2 into your function machine. You get negative 2 minus 1. A negative times a positive is going to give you a negative 2 minus 1. Negative 2 minus 1 is going to give you negative 3. And now you have all of your things. So this says 1. See, now you got to create your ordered pairs. You don't have to, but you can. Negative 2 is my given x value. We found that my y value was 1. When x is 0, y is negative 1. And then given that our x value is 2, our y value is negative 3. So we're going to graph it. So for my first one, I got negative 2, 1. So starting at my origin, because that 2 is negative, I'm going to go to the left 2, 1, 2, and then up 1 because that 1 is positive. my second one, I've got 0, -1. So starting at my origin, I've got 0 as my x value, so I don't move anywhere on my x-axis. And I've got -1, so I'm going to go down 1 on the y-axis. So there's number 2. And then my third one, I've got 2, -3. So my 2 is positive. So starting at the origin, going over to the right, 1, 2. And going down 1, 2, 3 for my y value. So that is my third point. Then I'm going to connect it the best I can. And there's my graph. So we're going to go over the other side tomorrow, but I'm going to do one really quickly in each section. So what is the value of f of -1 for the first little graph? So we come over to our graph and we say, well, x is going to be -1. So this means x is -1. What is y? So x-axis is the horizontal line. Starting at the origin, I'm going to go over to the left 1, and I'm looking at this line right here. Let me do that in a different color. So I'm looking at where x is -1, what is y? There's only one spot that crosses when x is -1. That is that spot right there that I just circled. What is the y value at that spot? Well, that's when I count over and see what value on the y value is right there. Starting at the origin, going up +1. So our y is going to be 1. So for the second section you gotta realize which graph you're gonna look at. So one is f and one is g. So the little check mark is going to be f, the little whatever you want to call it is g. So for number 6, we're asked if we do g of x and we substitute 4 in for x, what is going to be the value, or what is going to be the y value? So if I go over here on the x-axis, go to where x is 3, no, x is 4, my bad. X is 4. Where is my g function? The only place that it crosses is right here, so my y value is going to be roughly about 3. For the last one on this section, we've got, I'm going to look at 13. So when f of x equals -2, that means y equals -2, and you're wanting to figure out what x is. So you're coming over to the graph, you're going to y-axis, and you're looking at where y is -2, so it's right here. Now, how many times does it cross this line that I just drew? Twice. I don't care which value you choose, just give me one of the x values. So, I'm going to choose the first one it crosses. So it crosses at this point right here. So my x value is going to be -2. So over here for 13, it should be -2. Now for the last part, we are going to do, I think, the most complicated one, which is number 2. Number 2, we're substituting in values. I do not care if you use the calculator or not, but make sure you're able to do some of the simple math because it does not go away. So for the first little bullet point, we have substituting in 8 for x. So h of 8 equals 2. Instead of the x, I'm going to put 8 minus 5 minus 1. So we first have to deal with what this parentheses is. So 8 minus 5 is going to be 3, and then minus 1. Got to distribute that 2 to that 3, so we get 6 minus 1, and 6 minus 1 is 5. So that would be your first answer. Now, the second one has h of 0, so we're going to choose a different color, and we're going to have our second bullet point, and instead of x, we're substituting 0 in. So we've got h of 0 equals 2, instead of x, we've got 0 minus 5, parentheses minus 1. So we got to figure out what our parentheses is first. So 0 minus 5 is just negative 5 minus 1. And then 2 times negative 1, or negative 5, is negative 10, so positive times a negative, minus 1. And then negative 10 minus 1 gives us negative 11. For the last one, it's kind of like the other page where you had to figure out which one you're looking at. So the F was for 1, 2, and 3. For g of x, you're looking at number 4, 5, and 6. Oh, not 6. Number 6 was for f. So only 4 and 5 are looking at 6, or looking at g. So you're going to choose one of these. I'm going to choose number 1. It's telling me to look at the f function. So I'm going to have f of 2 equals 4. Instead of the x, I'm putting 2 in, minus 7. I'm going to distribute the 4. So 4 times 2 is 8, minus 7, and 8 minus 7 is 1. So that would be my answer for 1. So find the y coordinate corresponding to each x coordinate using the functions below. So that should have an s. So again, all of these are going to give us our x values, and we're substituting these in. Okay?